If we're good, are you guys good starting since we're at 4:02
Yep.
or
We're
do you need
recording.
to? Sure. Okay, great. All right. Well, with that, I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, May 12th. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. Okay. Um, so moving on to updates, I guess just a couple of things I want to highlight. Obviously, last Tuesday we had our budget referendum. And we fortunately had a 60% approval rate and about a 19% turnout. So thank you for everybody that took the time to vote last week. I think that's a higher turnout than we've had in a while. Last year was an anomaly, I think, because of Academy. We were over 30%, I think, for that turnout. But this 19% was definitely higher than what we'd seen in previous years before that. So it was nice to see people take an interest, and we appreciate the support. The overall budget increase was about 3.6%. And the Board of Finance met the next morning and voted on a mill rate increase of 0.64 mills, which leads to about a 2.85% overall increase in the tax rate. So those new revised bills will be going out in June as usual, and people will be getting their tax bills due or in the mail for the new fiscal year that starts on July 1st. So just wanted to highlight that. Secondly, we're entering our very busy season for the town of Madison, but also for the Madison 200 celebrations. It's America 250, but also Madison's bicentennial year. There are a lot of great events coming up. There's kind of three key events that we wanted to highlight. One is this Saturday, the Tavern Toast at the Deacon John Graves House. That's this Saturday, June 13th. And it's basically acknowledging when the town received word from Hartford that we were getting, we were approved to be an independent town. So there's going to be a really nice reenactment of that with the horse rider coming in and just to kind of celebrate, news coming to Madison that we were going to get our independence from Guilford. So that's the first event. The second important event, I would say, is June 27th at 11 o'clock at the Lee Academy. And that is really a more ceremonial commemoration of Madison becoming an independent town. Our first town meeting was actually held on June 19th. So this is kind of symbolically acknowledging, and I think I'm getting my days wrong, right? June 13th, excuse me, that June 13th is the commemoration day. And that'll be a nice ceremony with a lot of some music, some more ceremonial things like presentations of flags, some dignitary remarks. We've invited the governor to attend. So we would love to have any Madison resident come to that. I would bring a chair. There'll be some chairs available, but it'll be kind of like the Memorial Day service and be sitting outside. So encourage people to attend. And then the third big event is on June 27th, which is our Rising Strawberry Moon Festival, which is kind of the town party. And that's going to be an all-day event at the Surf Club. We're going to have live bands. We're going to be putting out soon kind of the names of all the entertainment for that afternoon, as well as the activities that are going to be happening there. And that's going to be at June 27th. At the Surf Club. So want to just push that. Some posters are going to be going up about that. And then if you go to the website, there's going to be a lot of stuff still happening throughout. Different organizations are hosting different celebratory events for the 200th. So, just want people to encourage to check the calendar and hopefully you can participate in some way. And then the last thing I just want to mention is the state budget was passed. I know there was a lot of discussion about this. And the town municipalities throughout the state did receive increased municipal aid this year. The town will be receiving about $205,000 in additional funding that we did not anticipate. I think later in this meeting, we'll be talking a little bit about, some appropriations we have coming up that this might help replenish that. But this aid is tied to the Mashantucket Pequot funding that was really set up many years ago by the state to provide municipal aid, but has kind of gotten sucked into the state budget over the years, funding other things. And so there's been a bit advocacy on all the towns to try to get some of that funding back to be directly back to municipalities. So that was a good thing that came out of the budget. And then I will also highlight that we did get additional one-year funding for the microtransit program. So anybody relying on the extra mile program here in Madison, between Madison and Guilford, there is going to be funding to continue that for one more year. As well as I think there's going to be some additional funding for Shoreline East that might add some extra schedules. So those are all good things that did come out of the budget. I just wanted to highlight those. So that is kind of my update, and I guess I'll leave it, I'll open it up to selectmen comments. Anybody?
None from
Nope.
me.
Meetings or anything to liaise about? Okay. So with that, I guess I'll move on to citizens' comments. Do we have any hands raised? Please raise your hand and say your name and address for the record, and please try to keep your comments to around 2 minutes. Any hands raised?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Jeannie, I can't.
There are no hands raised at this time.
All right. I don't think you're coming across on the Zoom though. Anybody else hear her?
Yeah. Sounds fun.
All right. Now I've lost all my sound.
We can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay. Let me figure this out. So I will move this on because I know we have the consent agenda. So I'm going to be looking at you because I can't hear anybody right now. Oh, went back to. Okay, this might be an issue. Hold on. Check the setting. Oh boy.
On your phone.
I will call Aaron.
Go on your phone.
Okay, I'm back in.
We can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you, Scott. All right.
You can always use your phone as
all
your
right, I'd like to
backup.
make a motion to, we'll move on to the first item under the business part of the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any further comments or questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Jen, you're muted and we can't see you. Are you voting yes or abstaining? Well,
She's commuting, she mentioned earlier, so she's
okay.
trying to move the meeting to her car Wi-Fi.
Okay, so she might have it. So we'll just put her as an abstain for that vote. So, all right, well, great. We'll move on to item number 7. And want to welcome Austin Hall, Director of Beach and Recreation, as well as Chad from Kenton Frost, who is our advisor on the Surf Club Master Plan, which we've been started last fall and been going through a planning process. We did a big public outreach in the fall, and I know that he's presented to the board some of the feedback from the community. And now we're getting closer to actually having what those plans might look like. And I thought today it was important to have him talk about the seawall because, a decision that we make, and when I talk about the seawall, I'm talking about the old seawall, the one that we're having is basically failing right now down at the surf club. And we've had a lot of conversations about that. And there's going to have to be some big decisions made by the town about what it wants to do going forward. Do we want to replace it? Do we want to move it? Do we want to make some sort of other changes to how we approach the beach? And so I thought this would be a good conversation starter for today. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the planning process, because I think the idea is that they will, Chad and his team will be coming back to us with actual plan proposals later this month. And then we would take those out to a public information session to get public feedback. So we're getting close to that. But I thought today we could just focus on the seawall and what it means for the surf club and some of the issues that we're seeing down there. So with that, I will turn it over. So thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Austin, do you want to kick it off with anything? I saw Austin, now I don't see him anymore. So I'll just go. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chad Frost with Kent Frost Landscape Architecture. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I am here today to do a fairly quick overview, really talking about the coastal issues, as Peggy alluded to, that you have been having. I don't have answers or faults or any of those sorts of things. It's really looking back at historical data so that we can see what's happened in the past, where we have come from, and where we might be going in the future, and how that might lead into some of the choices we want to make around the coastline. So starting off with, and this should have hopefully been in all of your packets. We just have a series of photographs. Obviously, this is last summer. I think everybody's very familiar with that. The new improvements last summer as they were finished up at Garvin Point, which came out looking great. Kind of what it looks like currently in the playground area, the grove of trees, the cedars that are around there. The opposite end, this is the beach access, kind of the real where the beach runs all the way past it on the eastern side. And then some of the issues that we've now been dealing with since the winter, right? And this is now maybe about a month ago, this photo was taken, where the town had already been in replacing some of the the mafia block down, and putting sandbags over some of the metal hooks. But you can still see, obviously, there's a couple feet of erosion where the sand has been lost adjacent to the steps. You can see on the wall where historically the sand was up a couple feet higher. Panning along the new portion of Garvin Point, and where the sand has obviously eroded away from the bottom and all along the edge. It is notable that this sand has already been building back up again, right? It goes away a lot of times in the winter with winter storms. It does come back a little bit to the summer, but we're seeing some extreme events at this point. So noted that when most of these blocks were put in, the sand was down another 2 feet and has since filled in a little bit. We don't anticipate it'll fill all the way back in naturally, but there is some ebb and flow. And you can see some of the photographs of where the wall has started to fail from everything being removed in front of it. This is the handicap ramp right now that comes down into the airspace. We know that Parks is in the process of bringing in sand to rectify the stairs and handicap transitions for the short term, but we need to do something for the long term. And again, this is the new area down at the end, and kind of the open airspace that's there at the bottom of the stairs currently. What we like to do when we do planning projects like this is to step back and look a little bit more holistically across the region. This is an old aerial photograph, so this is from 1934. We've highlighted the property that is now currently the surf club. And we were really looking at what the coastal condition was from 1934 to current 2026. And what's really interesting is that it's not just a problem happening along the surf club, it's happening along the whole coast. But you can see this line out here currently, or that was the current edge of water, the coastline in 1934, and this is now the current coastline in 2026. Right, so we've lost a good amount of land of beach. This is the current surf club building back when it was the actual clubhouse for the golf course. And you can see all the houses and buildings out at Garvin Point. One of the reasons we look at images like this is that we know historically we have sediment moving basically from left to right, or from west to east across the coastline. So we have sediment migrating this way, and we can see that because the sediment tends to build up behind areas of either natural or man-made impediments. In this case, Garvin Point, the rock pile out there, kept quite a bit of sand on the western side of the point, but then it would erode faster on the eastern side of the point. And this diagram kind of shows that historically that's how that's happened behind all of these natural points along the coastline, as we see the highest level of erosion on the eastern edge. And that's primarily because as the sand is traveling across, when it gets to a structure, whether it's natural or man-made, the sediment tends to drop out of suspension. And then the water that's passing through can hold more soil, if you will, in the water column. It picks up more sand and it starts carrying it away again. So we get more erosion in those pockets. And so that's what we wanted to highlight. One of the things we think that's happening here, and again, just to kind of focus in This is that Garvin Point area. That's where the new seawall has just gone up, and the stairs are probably right about there. And one of the areas that we'd find would, most likely be very high for erosion, which we're definitely seeing, as well as other areas along the coastline. We then kind of jumped to, this was a plan, if you were able to make it to any of our public information sessions, this was a plan that we had out there and we're going through with people on walking through, kind of talking about from historical times to now and what's changed. And so zooming in here, this is an old photograph. Obviously now it is the surf club. That's the surf club building. You can see the two buildings on Garvin Point out in that were still historically there. But you can see just how much beach there is, right? Historically, there was over 140 feet of beach from the wall out to the water line. Currently, we don't have anywhere near that. And that's both partly due to erosion and partly due to sea level rise, that we've lost quite a bit of beach. And again, this is just that same 1934 aerial where you can just see how much more land there was out there at that point in time. I'll also note these photographs that we've found here, these are from that same end. So this is from 2002, from December of 22. This is the Garvin Point before the project was done and the stairs that were there. And you can see that those stairs are well out of the ground again. Everything's been eroded around. We've got a lot of erosion that's happened behind. If you almost change the date from, 22 to 25, we have very similar conditions happening now. So the erosion that we're seeing now has definitely happened before in this similar area. It's good to know that the new project that was done, we don't see any damage on the backside, so we're not getting waves going around or eroding. Obviously on the old wall, which is lower and thinner and not built as deep, we got quite a bit of damage similar to what you saw in the past. Worth noting. Then as we pan down, we've now mapped a whole bunch of different lines onto kind of the existing aerial of Surf Club. Again, this outermost line, that's the 1934 coastline. So you can see just how much beach there really was historically to the mean high water line. Currently, this is our mean high water line right here at the elevation 2.3. And then we're planning for 20 inches of sea level rise. That's what CERCA has alerted all municipalities in the state to be aware of, that we're going to be experiencing 20 inches of sea level rise, potentially as soon as 2050, and that's what we should be planning for. When we add 20 inches of sea level rise on that, that's this innermost line right here. And you can see that at that point, the mean high water is effectively up to the handicap ramp coming down from Surf Club currently, and you have very little beach left. Assuming that all the sand that's there today is still there in the same place in the future. What we obviously saw from the storm end of last year, was that a lot of this sand was eroded away. So that means the tide line gets even closer until some of that sand comes back and gets replaced. And then what I would note too, that we find, I'll say, interesting as we do this, again, looking at the 34 coastline over here, the sand was effectively out to a rock pile that's off of Garvin Point now, and the sand went all the way through and around. As all that sand has started to migrate to the east, it erodes in different places at different rates. What's interesting to note here is that there's a man-made seawall here and some man-made structure on that private property just to the west of Surf Club. And that water line has basically stayed the same. That also stops all the sediment that's normally traveling down, gets stopped in those structures, which has now made quite a bit of erosion happening here at the boat area of Surf Club. And you can see historically we had a straight line. Now the water line actually juts in and then juts back out again. And so one of the things we think is happening as all of the sand that has historically been in this location has depleted, and the water moving across here is carrying even less sand, it's going to make the erosion on this side of the point probably speed up a little bit, which tends to be a little bit consistent with what we've seen in the last 5 years or so. And so this then looks at, like I said, the 34, the current high water, the mean high water, and then also the top of the wall is about elevation 9. Our AE zone is just beyond that. So that's that area of wave action. That's kind of the V zone, if you will, the high wave action zone where we don't want to build structures. You can see the existing surf club building now is just touching that V zone. So that makes it very high susceptibility for damage during the larger storms. And also that the finished floor of the surf club is at right about 10.9. The FEMA 100-year flood elevation for surf club property is 13, right? So we need to elevate this structure up a couple of feet to get it out of the flood zone. Or what we've talked about mostly with the public and heard a lot back was, yes, this is a nice building. It's probably not worth elevating, moving, changing, that we probably need to do replacement. And if we do, we need to move it outside of the V zone and we need to elevate it to make sure that it's above the FEMA flood line as well. I will note this is just the official FEMA map, just so you can see where those different zones are over the property. Then what we've done is we've mapped kind of storms, surges, as well as sea level rise over the property. So again, you can see the outline of the surf club property, and we've got a bunch of different mapped elevations on it. So I'll go through them real quick. So currently, mean high water, you can't really see much. There's just a tiny bit of sea level against the wall down at the bottom. When we do mean high water plus 20 inches of sea level rise, the good news is there isn't a ton of change at a very high level, right? The water comes up closer, it gets up to the stone wall or up to the retaining wall, but we're not flooding the property. Interestingly enough, the private property to the west, all those wetlands do start to get inundated just with sea level rise of 20 inches. Then when we start looking at storm events, at current sea level with a 10-year storm event, this is what we'd anticipate to see for the flooding. Good news is quite a bit of the surf club is still dry. This is the wetlands that everybody kind of drives from the one side to the other side by exchange. So we'd expect the wetlands to flood. There's quite a bit of the road, obviously, here that we all know is low. We have wetlands to both sides. That all floods, and floods into the golf course quite well, and floods about, say, third of the baseball fields to the side of Strong Field. However, when we take then a 10-year storm and add 20 inches of sea level rise, it gets even further. It's now covered both ball fields. It's expanded further in. Flood zones happen greater in the wetland areas. A 30-year storm with current sea level isn't actually as bad. You can see the limits there. Just go over parts of the field. And then obviously a 30-year storm with 20 inches of sea level rise is our worst inundation. So going back to the map where we put everything over, the blue is our current storm event. The purple is our 30-year storm event. This pink here is a 10-year storm event with sea level rise. And then the lightest pink is the 30-year storm with 20 inches of sea level rise. So what's important to note about this is that actually in the future with sea level rise, just our 10-year storms are going to be worse and have a greater impact than what we're used to with a current 30-year storm. So that's why storms will be worse in the future, even though the storms are technically smaller. The good news, though, as we look at this, right, Strong Field, even with a 30-year storm and 20 inches of sea level rise, should stay for the most part mostly dry. So that's a really good thing to know. Yes, the grass fields, the ball fields go underwater. Those can tolerate it a little bit better than synthetic turf, where we have particles in there that can float away and have a little more damage. So that's a good thing to see. Likewise, most of the amenities along the coast stay dry for the most part. We have some inundation in the back with the overflow parking and the skate park and some of those areas, but for the most part, up through a 30-year storm, most of the park stays pretty dry, which is good to know. This is a quick one. I won't spend too much time, but basically we look at kind of ecological typologies out there. All of you kind of know this inherently, but we have salt marshes, we have beach dunes, we have wetlands, we have wooded hillsides, we have cedar groves, we have some lawn, and then we obviously have a lot of it, which is man-made disturbed area, whether it's athletic fields, parking, or grass. but just one of the things that we like to pay attention to as we look for planning. And then next, one of the things we heard quite strongly from the public as we talked about different areas or different ways and methodologies to do coastal protection is that there was a high degree of the public that liked to do nature-based coastal protection. So not just building a seawall. Right now you have a sand beach up to the seawall. But as we went through some of those educational sessions, there seemed to be quite a few people that were interested in a nature-based type solution where we try to work with nature and not just, I'll say, against it with a seawall or a hard structure. So what we've identified here is that there's basically kind of 4 different areas of that nature-based solutions that will probably be fitting for you. One is called beach nourishment, which is basically when we keep putting sand back on the beach to replenish it. One is dune restoration. Then we have living breakwaters with reef balls or some sort of a living structure under the water surface, or an engineered breakwater, which is kind of like, we call it a sill. It's kind of like a rock jetty, but it doesn't stick out from the water. It runs parallel to the coastline to break the wave action. And then we've just identified where within the property different things are valued or are likely to work as how we do it at this point. And then I just wanted to show you some sections of what those could typically mean and where we will probably be headed with the master planning process for the coastline. So this is your existing condition, right? We have the seawall, we have the beach, we have this is the mean high water, we have the high water tide, then we have sea level with 20 inches, and then we have a 10-year storm with sea level rise, and you can see how high the water gets in that existing condition. When we talk beach nourishment, what beach nourishment basically is we're coming out and we're placing a whole lot of sand. And that can be that we're trucking in sand that meets the same gradation and sieve size as the existing sand out there, or we might be dredging sand from just offshore. We've heard from a lot of the public that they think there's quite a bit of a big area just off the coast where that sand is building up and forming a little reef or a bar. So we could dredge that and pump that back up on the shore. But we want to build basically a big dune that goes quite a ways out into the water and fill that all with sand. What we expect to happen is over the first year or 3, this settles back down. We get some of this sand will slough down and it settles out into a more gradual slope that we expect to be kind of similar to the natural profile here. But we want that to happen, I'll say, naturally over the course of a couple of years. So that's beach nourishment. The next option is to do a couple of different strategies in addition. So this would be beach nourishment where we place the sand. Then we'd also look at doing a dune restoration behind the area of the seawall. So that's your existing seawall. Then behind it, we build a dune so that this provides a natural place for sand to fill back in again in the future, right? So what happens with beach nourishment, if there's no natural place for the sand to come from as it gets eroded, which it will every handful of years, the town as a maintenance strategy will have to go back and continue to replenish the sand every so often, whether it's every couple of years, every 5 years, you're back in there to replenish it as it erodes. This option looks at, let's build a dune that naturally as waves come up here, this is kind of a sacrificial dune and it'll help fill back in as we get erosion. And then what we also do at the toe is do what we call a living breakwater. We're showing reef balls here. There's several different ways of doing this, but basically down in the water, kind of below the surface of the water, we create some habitat type structures that break the wave energy as it comes in so that the bottom of the waves get kind of slowed down. It forces the waves to break sooner and creates less erosion for what is now hopefully the nourished beach. So these 2 features help to keep that nourishment in place longer than if it was just straight up beach nourishment. And then the last one, which we are showing just for discussion purposes, really is again, the dune restoration, the beach nourishment, and then what's called an engineered sill out in the water. This is a rock structure that comes up just to the surface of the high water so that all waves as they're coming through get forced to break on this. It is a viable strategy in Connecticut to use. We have done them in different places in Connecticut. we don't think it's probably the best case for Madison or for the surf club, just because right here, that would basically be like putting, a rock sill along the majority of your coastline just out in the water, which we don't think the public would probably appreciate very much, since right now you like to be able to go out and swim right out and have free access to the rest of the water. This would be a blockade of that. So we want to talk about it because it is technically an option that is viable, but it probably wouldn't be very palatable to the public. And so really, we're kind of focused on these sections, and we'll be applying this area and the dune restoration, beach nourishment, as we start doing our planning process for the rest of the park, or the surf club. And so, the playground, the club building itself, some of those things that are up close to the wall now get pushed back a little bit in order to make room for this restoration area. And so that's kind of what we just wanted to give you the preview today to let you know that's where we're headed with some of our planning process at this point. And then we do plan to be back at your next meeting, I believe, in a couple of weeks to review those concepts. And we're going to be in front of the Beach and Rec Commission either later this week or early next week, if I can remember the right schedule, to review them, the first concepts with them, get their feedback. We assume that they'll then forward that along to you, and we'll be in front of you at your next meeting to review their feedback and what our plans are looking like for the surf club. And what I would say is we expect this to be an iterative design process, right? That this is the first, we're not going to come out and say, this is the one plan, we're ready to go. We expect it to be an iterative process where we put things out there to make people think, and even like this, is this what we want? What's the impact of this? That's where the playground is. What's going to happen to the playground if that dune goes where the playground is? And so we want to start that kind of conversation. Once there's now a plan to look at, it's a lot easier to get that feedback. And we'll go through some renovations and some revisions over the next couple of months. So I think that's about it for me, but happy to take any questions.
Just a quick question, just relative to your point about blocking the playground. I think when we went through the Garvin Point conversation, I think one of the paramount guidelines was to really, make sure that we're not blocking the visibility of the sea and the ocean, make sure that people can see it. Would a dune impede that view?
What we're showing here now is a short dune that's wider so that it doesn't impede the view. At this point, it's not a 14-foot tall dune that you would see in a lot of, high wave coastal communities. What we're trying to do here is lower and wider to get the same volume of sand, but not block the view. We also anticipate that some of the amenities behind the dune will probably likely raise up at the same time, right? And we know the surf club needs to be elevated, the structure needs to be elevated a couple of feet. If other amenities are moving, those might elevate up as well, so that the height of the dune becomes less obstruction from a visual perspective from inside of the club. But yes, I totally agree. We heard the same thing pretty much loud and clear. It's the crown jewel. If you're out there and you can't see the water, that's a problem. And so we're definitely paying attention to that.
Can I ask, what sort of approval process do we need to go through with outside entities? Any involvement from Army Corps of Engineers, anything like that?
Yes to all of that. So yes, it would be Army Corps of Engineers. It would be DEP approval. So both of those are your two main entities. And there's different processes we'd go through, but as we start to hone in on or hear from the public and hear from you guys as to what the preferred solution might be, we then bring DEP in and start having those preliminary discussions to make sure they agree. And I would just stress, this is like the very beginning where we say, here's all the range of options. We think this is the best one. But then the real next step would be to say, now we need to do a really detailed engineering study to make sure this is how much fill, this is the wave action, here's the real details, and kind of do all that engineering work to then go support the permitting process down the road.
Mm-hmm. And once we get to that point, what would the public be able to expect in terms of like a time frame from, doing those deep engineering studies through completion of project? I know there's, it can be variable with getting the approvals and that sort of thing, getting all of our certifications. But, rough estimate, what would
Rough
people
estimate.
typically expect?
Yeah, we normally say you should plan for about a year of kind of planning, design, study time, and plan for about a year of permit time.
Okay.
So about a 2-year process. And generally, if all that can work in tandem, that gives you about then those same 2 years to do fundraising, find sources of money to be able to afford it by the time the project gets permitted.
Okay, so 2 years approximately to permitting, and then once work starts, how long does that typically take?
So I would say the beach nourishment, ironically, is very quick. So that doesn't take long. That's a matter of a couple of months tops. The depends on what's around it, depends on what other phases, as we'll talk about at your next meeting when we start looking at all the other potential changes we might be considering, like the building moving or reconstruction, parking lot shifts and road changes and the playground relocation, all those things start to snowball, and there'll be a whole lot of decisions to be made as to what of those pieces do we like, what don't we like, what are the phases, what are we going to do first, second, third, fourth, and then this will have to fit into that, right? So it could be very well that you might choose to go after a piece of the project that we can permit relatively easily and build rather quickly while we're going through the permitting process for this portion at the same time. Just
Okay,
it'll depend on budgets and phases.
right, great, thank you.
Well, and I think some of this would also be, it's sequencing too, because obviously if you're going to build a dune, that means the building has to be removed or moved, right? If it's going to impact that or the playground. So that's part of the, phasing of this and, sequencing of it, what makes sense when, funding obviously is going to help drive that as well. So I would envision we're going to be phasing in this project, over 2 to 3 phases and prioritizing certain things and that make the most sense. So I think though, what I think is interesting is those charts that show just the change, that's really happened. Obviously the 38 hurricane was a long time ago. So but it's quite substantial though, when you see how much of the beach has been lost.
Yeah.
And, and then to know that things are accelerating as well, because of rising sea levels. So when we have these issues, they're coming more quickly, right? And each storm is having a greater impact because of that. And so, it's it is quite astounding to see like what the change the change has been. And I think what's been, there's a couple of key things. I think that the feedback from the public was everybody understands the surf club just cannot remain where it is, right? Even if we elevated it, it would be problematic because we need to have this, we have to preserve the beach somehow with dunes or, some other, so we need it back further, right? So the design plans that you'll be proposing when we meet towards May will be a couple of different scenarios of where that building goes. But the reality is that building is going to be demolished, right? I think the thought process was at least, and that's something we can talk more about, but we're not looking at raising and restoring. I think that our understanding from what we even heard from the public was it just makes more sense to just tear the building down and then rebuild something in a new location. So I just want to highlight that these options that will be discussed next week will involve that. So it's not going to be moving the surf club building. It's going to be building a new building, basically.
Yeah, that's 100% what we heard from the public, and it's part of that 300-page report or something of summarizing all of that public feedback.
Yeah, and you couldn't do substantial renovations to the surf club because it is in a floodplain, and so you're restricted by that 50% improvement rule unless you elevate it anyway. So
Correct.
there's just, too many factors that are creating it to make it cost prohibitive, I think, for us to preserve the building. You got to elevate it, you got to move it, and then you also have to renovate it. So it's almost, you're better off starting from scratch.
Yeah, and what we did here is that there was a great affinity for the, I'll say, the aesthetic of the building, right? And the fact that it doesn't feel like it's more than it needs to be. It's the appropriateness of the building people liked, but people didn't actually like the building itself, right? Like the bathrooms and the spaces within it and the quality of the finish and some of those sorts of things. So that they don't want a brand new, fancy, big, modern building here. There's an aesthetic that is appreciated, but definitely an understanding that the building itself doesn't meet the needs, can't easily be renovated to meet the needs, and it would be much more cost effective to simply replace the building. So yeah, the concepts we're working up now will have a new building in three different or a couple of different locations that we're working through. And it will also be an expanded size of the building, right? What we heard from the public was that the existing kind of event space there that seats 75 people isn't enough. We need to have something that seats up to 150. There's room or a strong desire to have a program space in addition to that event space so that if there's a rental, say a wedding happening, there can be another small group or an area for the public to still use a program type space. So there is an expansion of use within that proposed new structure, and we'll be proposing both what that looks like footprint wise from a single story as well as from a double story, two-story building, and how that can fit potentially on the site.
Um, I mean, I don't know if other board members, I just wanted to maybe talk a little bit more about the seawalls again, because I know that's been a big discussion amongst the public. So the seawall that is kind of failing, so to speak, we think it was built after Gloria in the late 80s. So we think that's what it dates to. So it's beyond its useful life at this point, right?
Yep.
But we're in a situation now where, we're a few years away, right, from the solution, right? So, and one of the solutions is just you're going to leave it there and let it fail, right? Is that what you're presenting? Or because you talked about one of them where you leave the existing wall there, but then you build dunes around it. Is that wall still required to be stabilized or replaced? Like if you could go back to the three, I wasn't quite sure what's being proposed in terms of the wall, like, right.
Good question. Yeah, so
Yeah.
so the plan, we were basically showing that for reference in this location. We weren't showing that
Okay.
it should stay. It just is to give you a kind of a place marker as to where things are in relation to today. So it doesn't need to stay in either of these in that particular location. It'd probably be better for it to not stay in the future. If there was to be a wall or a hardened structure built into a system like this, we would normally do it within the dune, and we kind of bury a wall or bury a structure in here so that you get that fortified, hardened surface. If let's say the new building happened to be really close to the back of the dune, we'd probably want to have a seawall built into this dune. Not that you're going to see it, or some sort of structure there to just give you that extra protection to make sure erosion never gets to the foundation of the building. But the idea would be in most of these scenarios that wall goes away.
So what
It
about
is failing.
the beach nourishment option above where we're just trucking in sand all the time?
So this would be the most simple
Yeah.
one here. You're right. That one we didn't even touch the
Yeah.
wall, right? There's nothing. We're just leaving the wall where it is. We might be fortifying, we might be rebuilding it a little bit where it's fallen over, but we're not moving anything. And we're just filling up against it.
Is there, I mean, if we were for this approach, right? Which now doesn't require relocating some things, perhaps, right? Because, you're basically trying to rebuild the beach out to the ocean, right? Versus allowing the beach to be rebuilt more on shore, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't require relocation necessarily of as many things that we have existing conditions, right? So, is this really a viable option? Or is it cost effective? Or do you feel like this is really not going to do what we needed to do?
So I think it's definitely a viable option. I think we might still do, by the time we do the engineering, we might still find that that existing seawall should be replaced. We don't want to leave a wall that's already compromised. So anything that's already damaged would be replaced no matter what. We're just filling up to it. And then we'd have to assess, I'll say, the newer, older walls to see if they can stay in that location. The downside is that when you do the beach, strictly just the beach nourishment, you're on like a maintenance program, right? We know that all this sand is going to go away, and you're just going to have to pay to truck it back in or fill it back in, and we're not protecting it as much. You could do, say, just beach nourishment and just the reef balls, and not do some of the dune restoration behind. So those are all kind of. It's not necessarily one versus the other. We're trying to just talk about what are some of the options, but it could be that if for some reason in the planning, as we put this dune area in, if that takes up too much of your critical land area of the surf club, and you say, no, we don't want to have that, we might end up going back and holding that line of the wall in some portion, so that you can maintain as much property behind it, and we just focus on doing beach nourishment out into the water. But it
Is
just
there
means that
ever a
there's just more maintenance required. So.
Yeah.
Kat, is there ever a scenario where you start with, these balls in the ocean and then you go to sort of the next piece of it? Is there a phasing of it, so to speak?
Yeah.
Do you always, or is it better to do the full plan?
Well,
Loaded question.
it is a loaded question. I was in a perfect world. It's always better to try to do everything that you know is the best scenario, would be what I would say. That being said, um, let's say we meet with DEP out there and they say, hey, beach nourishment is easy for us to permit. We can do that kind of on an expedited basis through a general permit, blah, 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 right? And they can say, we can do that quickly. Maybe then that's worth saying, okay, let's figure out how to do that quickly. And then we can worry about some of the other structure down the road, and that's, and phase it. And again, I think we are definitely looking at phasing. So it could be one of those things where that's part of the question we have to do in the engineering is, will this beach nourishment stay? What's the projected timeline we think it's going to be there? And if let's say it's at replenish every 10 years, then maybe you could put it in and you don't have to do some of the extra stuff for 5 years. And you still buy yourself some time. So it doesn't have to be an all or one. It's kind of a progression. And I would say that all the residents have lived with this kind of slow erosion over time and not really directly notice it until you're down to the final little bit, right? And you're now kind of down to that final stretch of sand, and it becomes very noticeable. So it might be that the beach nourishment buys us 20 or 30 years of time, and then that is the option we can kind of run with.
And the plans for the entire park and where the building goes, though, you are going to assume dune restoration as part of that at one point. So we would leave room for that, even if we don't do it initially.
Correct.
Yeah.
We want to show that as long as this is a viable option, which we heard from the public sounded great. If anybody here horribly disagrees, we want to know about it. But we still think this is the right approach to do coastal rejuvenation type work, right? Is to build in that habitat, that coastal edge. And so in our planning, we're accommodating for that dune. It might be wider in some areas and narrower in other areas. But that'll show what that impact is along the rest of the surf club and how we move amenities around because of that. So if for some reason that we come up with a plan along here that you really it's untenable, you really don't like it because of this dune location, then that might be more reason to look at, do we do a newer type of seawall in addition to the beach nourishment, and not lose that quote unquote land along there. But so that'll be part of the discussion. We're going to show it with the dune there so you can see what the impact is. And if the impact you don't like, then we can remove it.
Okay.
Do you know communities that are going at the straight beach renourishment as a short-term plan, and anybody that we could talk to see how it's working out?
We can definitely get that for you. Yeah, I know Rhode Island's got several of them going on right now. In Connecticut, I don't know off the top of my head if anybody has one in your scenario, right? Like you have a high wave action with a lot of exposure. Um, so I would, but I can talk to DEP and see if they've got an example of one that's currently working.
And are there any other structures that we could put out in the water that would slow down this migration of sand? I'm thinking about this. We've got the prediction of sea level rise, and we've got this other action of the sand migrating east. The sand migrating east would seem to be the more short-term concern that we've got in front of us right now.
Yes, except the placing of the basically the way we used to stop that coastal migration was to build a jetty, right? And all along the coast, we've got all of those, jetties sticking out perpendicular to the coastline. And what they basically do is they create little shark fins of soil, right? You get erosion on one side and it all builds up on the other side, makes the erosion worse on the other side. So DEP does not permit those any
Yeah.
longer because it basically causes more problems on your neighbor's property than it solves on your property. So we want to basically almost figure out a way to allow for nature to want to do that migration. And one of the things we'll probably be very strongly looking at, right, is if the beach here used to be all the way out to here and now it's eroding back in, this might be an optimal location to do a lot of extra beach nourishment, right? We might do it here because we need to have that beach frontage or we want to have that beach for people to sit on. But this is basically like planting seeds, if you will, over here of the beach that we give the water sand to carry across here, so that as the sand gets eroded here, it's naturally being picked up from here and deposited where we want it. So that's more likely to be approved by DEP than doing a bunch of jetties and things like that to stop the migration. And this might be a very easy location because of, that's the boat storage area. We could back trucks down in there and get sand delivered there pretty easily and kind of have that be our place to let nature continue to want to do its thing, but yet not have drastic impacts on the surface.
I wanted to ask to help the public visualize the scale of these dunes. Is this somewhat similar to what we see at the state park at Hammonasset?
Probably even shorter. I mean, these are like right now we're showing these that are like 3 to 4 feet tall.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, as we talk more about the facility too, it was helpful to understand the flooding issues, and some of our biggest investments, like Strong Field, for example, is not going to be vulnerable. Now, I don't know when they did Strong Field, did they elevate that? They probably put a bunch of, fill underneath to raise it, probably, I guess.
I
So,
think they definitely did, right? We can tell
yeah.
by that flood line, right?
Yeah.
That it follows the contour of the field. Whether they did that intentionally, that was the elevation. My guess is that we probably got a little bit lucky that an elevation over here, because of the way you build fields and level it out, that they picked something that worked here and carried it across. But it worked out phenomenally well, because if this was going to be inundated in every 10-year storm, then we definitely need to think about elevating it in the very near future. Right now, I would feel fairly comfortable that, going forward for the next 10, 20, 30 years, that you can kind of keep maintaining this field at this elevation without having to worry about elevating it yet.
Yeah.
Now if we get a 100-year storm, it's 100% getting wet. But
Mhm.
for the majority of the storms we get up through that 30-year storm, it should stay dry.
Okay, great. So very helpful. I think that as we go through this process, there's going to have to be some decision points, right, about what we're trying to target. I think what we decide for that beach piece, it sounds like you've made the assumption that there is going to be possibly some dune restoration. Everything's going to be designed now back further from the shore. So that's helpful. So what the next phase, when we see kind of the whole park plan, there's some key assumptions that are part of that, right? The
Right.
building's getting taken down and moved to a different location, and we're going to be accommodating a larger beach back into what is now where the playground and some of the picnic areas and things like that for the surf club building. So just so people aren't surprised when they see that as part of that,
Yeah.
but it's kind of necessity is requiring us to do that and make sure that if we're going to put a lot of money into building new things, it's going to last for a long time. So, and then I just do want to talk a little bit about, the temporary measures that have been done down there was just to stabilize that area, because as we continue to see more erosion happen, the old wall is starting to fail, right? So, the mafia blocks, the sandbags are there to just protect the mafia blocks. We're doing bringing in some sand that's more on an emergency basis, and we're okay doing that with the state. Obviously, what Chad is talking about, beach nourishment, this is on a whole nother scale of any of the sand things that we're putting in here. And, and sand is expensive, I will say that. So, it is going to be on a much larger scale. As we go through this process, we'll be kind of pricing this out a little bit, getting an order of magnitude, obviously not, but to give a general idea of like what these programs would cost, and what it would require for us to implement some of this stuff. So, but I think it's great to see it kind of start coming together. And then, the May 26th meeting would be seeing actual options. And then the intention is to have probably the second or, mid-June, have a public information session. So the public could actually come and look and see, and we can get direct input from the public on the options. And then go from there. So, any other questions by board members or?
I
Not a
think the
question.
obvious one is cost, right? So like at some point we're going to get to a conversation, I would think, right, about dollars and cents relative to each one of these options and phasing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm assuming that's where we're headed.
We are headed there. Yeah, we go through quite a lengthy process to get there. We want to make sure that the park is close to what you want before, we start diving deep into every single thing and work out costs. But absolutely, the end product is a master plan that has a cost estimate with it that we help you break into phases and implementation strategy.
And
Sorry,
then I
Jen.
just have, oh, that's okay. Yeah, I just have one too. Obviously this is going to be a multi-year process. But just for the benefit of the community's knowledge and to allay any sort of worries that they might have regarding the surf club building and its maintenance. I know that, obviously the value of the building is not that great. So meeting that 50% threshold of its value would occur very quickly as it pertains to our floodplain ordinance and FEMA elevations and that sort of thing. But I know I spoke with Austin earlier today that Beach and Rec and grounds crews are continuing to, maintain the facility, maintain the building. I know there's been some concerns about some weathering and damage that occurred perhaps over the winter. So I just want to, if we could, let the public know that those kind of general maintenance concerns will be continued to address, as we move through this master planning process.
So, yes, we address the maintenance concerns of the surf club every day.
Yep.
So, obviously, we're not going to let the building get into complete disrepair. It may not be on the time frame that some members of the public want it to be, but we are addressing everything as it comes up, and some prevention measures as well.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
we will
absolutely.
not let the building, become unsightly or unusable. Like I was
Dangerous.
telling
Yeah.
some folks earlier, Rotary Club is doing their day of service on Saturday and mulching the front of the surf club building where the gardens are. We've made some improvements to the boardwalks leading out to the beaches over the winter.
I saw those. Those look great.
But things like roof and building, besides adding and fixing some of the panels that came loose, which we're doing currently, I don't think we should be sinking a ton of money into a building that's not going to be here in a couple of years. But with that said, keeping it up and usable and looking good for the public. We will be power washing the building prior to Memorial Day, as we do every year. We are keeping up on it and we'll continue to.
Yeah, and I think what I, learned from, doing this, 6 years now, and is every year around late April, early May, everything explodes, right? Because you get a nice day out, and then everybody's out trying to use all the facilities in town. But there's a limited window that the town staff have to transition from winter time to, prepping for the summer. So just when the public wants to start using the facilities, the weather has just turned so that this town staff can address some of these issues. So, and there's a big demand because it's also all the fields in town, all the sports
Yeah.
teams, multiple beaches, multiple parks, and it's all at once where the demand comes in, flooding in, and they have a limited window between, winter and spring to kind of get things ready for the summer season. So, I think they do a fantastic job. They recognize that, starting Memorial Day, the surf club is the place to be. And we'll be doing everything to make sure things are as good condition as we can have them, and safe and available for the public to enjoy. I know sometimes it's a patience issue, right? It's not going to the first time you've been on the surf club, probably because the weather was the last week. And, everybody starts noticing all the problems. They're not problems. They're just normal wear and tear from a rough winter down there. And the staff has a list. They start, chipping away at it, and they get as much done as they can. And they usually do a great job trying to address everything by the time things really open up, for the summer.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
So,
Yep. Like I said, I just wanted to allay, the worries of the public that things wouldn't be ready in time because, those of us that have been going down for sports and everything, we're continually seeing, the updates and the improvements and whatnots that are happening. But like you said, if there's, a nice day and people get down there for the first time, they'd be, get concerned. So that's why I just wanted to allay, any public concerns, especially as we're talking about, demolishing the building potentially as part of the master plan. It's like things aren't gonna, fall to the wayside in the meantime.
Yeah, and I think I know another thing that always seems to come up is the stair height. This is an ongoing battle every year because it's called, tides change, we're losing sand, and it is a constant battle. So we can't, design stairs that will always allow you to hit the bottom of the sand. It's just impossible to do because of the way the tides work and the sand moving all the time. And so, and in the past they've tried to put these wooden connections on, which that created a hazard and a problem because those weren't really safe to do. So it's not that we're just don't understand how to design stairs or don't understand to make them longer. It's nature. And we kind of have to come to a point where we're like, this is the best we can offer. But we're dealing with beach erosion, significant beach erosion, and we're dealing with storms and tides that change all the time, the level of the sand. So hopefully some of the earlier, pictures demonstrated that things are changing a lot down there. And so it's not that things aren't being done properly. It's more that we have to adapt to nature constantly. So I think Austin really is trying to do as good a job as possible to do that. And even when we move to this new, dunes, it's still, we're still going to be battling nature. It's the beach.
Yep.
Uh, so anyway, I mean, all good stuff though, because I think now, like I said, everybody's very focused on the surf club because of the time of the year and the weather's changing, and that's a great thing. And then, things settle down, and then, by the time you get through 4th of July, it's like the summer's almost over, right?
Yeah.
4th of July is the crescendo, I guess.
Peggy, I know there's a fair amount. There's a question in the Q&A, but I think there's some concern, obviously, about failure of the old wall and some of the work that was done at Garvin Point. I know we're addressing that in an upcoming meeting. Is that fair to say? I just want to make sure we're sort of
Yeah,
at
we've
least
been, we've
talking
had
about
an
it.
engineering looking at how the two walls interact with each other, because that has been obviously a topic for debate, but also I think it's just as we continue to see the erosion behind the old wall, that structure's moving now. And so it's causing issues because it's connected to Garden Point. Garden Point is, sheet pile drilled in. So that is not going to fail. It's not, the old wall is not going to impact it, but there is a connection point and so I think how those are connected. Because if you didn't have them connected, then you might have a lot more erosion happening because more water flow would be flowing in between the two structures. So we're looking at all that now. We've had 2 storms to see how these are all functioning together, and also how successful the erosion control measures that we took a couple months ago. And ironically, that got delayed even more because we had the blizzard come in. So we had even more erosion happen while we were waiting to get the repair done. So it's just been, we're battling weather and nature. And but that'll be talked about more as we have this engineer look at the connection between the two. But I think it also highlights that, we may not have a wall. It sounds like we're not going to have a wall going forward. So we don't want to run around and spend a lot of money making all these giant repairs. We want to keep it somewhat functioning while we go through this planning process. So any other questions for Chad?
One quick one as I don't want to say an emergency thing, but as a way to resolve the current mitigation that we've got going on with the wall that's beginning to lean. If we were to spend the money, bring in all of the sand and essentially bury that wall back to its last visible foot, could we do that just to buy ourselves a period of years? Would burying it sufficiently stabilize it until we get to the point where we decide we're going to take it out and replace it or move it or do something like that?
My short answer would be yes. You certainly could. I don't think the wall will serve you much, right? You're kind of like, it's already started to lose some integrity in places, so the wall is not serving much. It's basically just like if the wall wasn't there and you filled sand up to the top of the dirt, you get about the same level of protection. The permitting process to place all that sand takes the same amount of time to do that, much like beach nourishment. It's that same schedule. So I think that's why we go for whatever that preferred method is, because it's the same amount of permitting time to get there. And it could be that you, like I said, it might be if I show you the concepts and you think, oh, there's just too much impact to the club. We don't want to lose this, whatever that is, right? We want the wall to stay where it is. Then that might end up being one of the options that we just bury the wall where it is, and we get as many years out of it as we get up to it. But we're at least going to start with from what we know of coastal design and where things are going to move. This would be the optimum way to handle this scenario, and then we'll scale back from there if the impacts are too great.
So I know we have Austin here. Any more questions for Chad? And then, like I said, he'll be visiting us again the end of May, which will be a lot to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for your time. And these slides will be available on the website, for the public if they want to see them. They're usually posted after the meeting. And then I know Austin is here just to give us an update about all the work that's getting ready and the summer season and kind of remind people, when beach passes are required and all that stuff. So if that, I can turn it over to Austin now. I don't, do you have slides, Austin? I think there
Yeah.
was something in the packet. Yeah. Okay.
Jeannie's got them.
I can share
Okay.
them.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chad. There we go. All right. So, Peggy, thank you. As I do every year, we will tonight update you on some important dates, information leading into Memorial Day and throughout the summer. So appreciate you having me. A lot to talk about. I'll do it as quickly as I can. So next slide, Jeannie, please. So we've been very busy selling beach passes since April 1st, beach parking passes for Madison residents. No change in this from previous years. So quickly, $40 for the first car, $20 for second, third, and fourth for ages under 64 and under. Senior beach parking passes for ages 65 and up continue to be $10. Resident veteran beach parking passes of any age are $10 for the first car, $20 for the second car. And the resident or resident guest day beach parking passes continue to be $10 per vehicle. And if you're worried about getting your beach pass prior to Memorial Day, we are open 7 days a week. Right now, 9 to 5, and continue to be open 9 to 5 for purchases of beach parking passes. You do not need to rush down here to get one. You can purchase your season resident parking pass the first day you come. So if you come on the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, you could come on, we'll let you in and come buy the pass that day. If you want to be proactive and purchase it now, I think that's a great idea. And you could do that as your schedule allows. Next slide, Jeannie. So gate guards will check passes as we always do from 9 to 5, beginning Saturday, May 23rd through May 25th, which is a Monday of Memorial Day. Saturdays and Sundays only, May 30th through June 21st. And then we begin the 7-day-a-week operation on Monday, June 22nd, all the way through September 7th, which is the Monday of Labor Day. We have in the past few years required beach parking passes at West Wharf from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. It is the smallest parking lot. So in order to allow Madison residents and their guests to park and have a place to park, we guard the gate guard hut until 8 p.m. To allow for parking pass holders to have access to a spot. Lifeguards will be on duty beginning Saturday, May 23rd through Memorial Day, which is Monday the 25th, and then weekends only until Saturday, June 19th, when school is out, and continue 7 days a week through Labor Day, or as we can staff the lifeguard chair. So most, if not all, of our lifeguards are high school and college students. So we hire as many as we can, and we do a tremendous job recruiting and holding on to our lifeguard staff. So we do not have issues like other towns and facilities have with lifeguards. We continue to get returning guards and new guards every year, which is how we like to do it. So we have a bunch of returners, a bunch of new people, and then maybe next year, those guards who return this year go on and get adult jobs after they graduate, and then we have staff rotating in as required. So we never have a full staff of rookie guards. We always have some returners and senior guards in the mix. Lifeguards are on duty in the chairs 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So you'll see them here reporting to duty at 9. And from 9 to 11, we have morning workouts, drills, trainings, and then it takes them a little bit to set up their stations for the day. So we have lifeguards do running, biking, walking, calisthenics, a lot of cardio work to maintain that level of fitness required to be a lifeguard, and we do that every day that they're here. We will continue to have. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to highlight, Austin, you mentioned, because every year we do get people calling in June, why aren't there lifeguards, during the week? And we are really at the will of the school schedule, and school's ending later because of all the snow days. So normally school would be like the week before. So we might be staffing, full-time staffing everything a week earlier. But I know Austin mentioned it. I just want to emphasize it again because we always get questions that there's no lifeguards. Why is there lifeguards? Why doesn't town do this? Well, it really is dependent on the school schedule. School's getting a graduation, I think, is June 18th, right? So that's when school's out, and that's when we start seeing more kids coming to the beach, families. But if you have, if you're not in the, if you don't have kids, you're probably not aware that school is getting out later this year. So I just want to highlight that.
Yeah, and then we always have, like I said, 3 chairs at Surf Club and 1 chair with 2 guards at East Wharf. So 1 is up in the chair, and then 1 is breaking on the ground as backup if an emergency occurs, or to perform first aid while the other guard stays in the chair watching the waterfront. Next page, Jeannie, please. So the non-resident beach parking passes went on sale for the season passes went on sale last Monday, and we had well over 400 people waiting in line. First gentleman was here at 4 a.m. waiting in line. We sold all 100 passes probably in about a half an hour. And then we sent everyone else away. Non-resident day parking passes, which are purchased the day of use. So non-residents cannot purchase passes ahead of time, except for the July 4th weekend, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So non-resident day parking passes are purchased on the day of use at Surf Club office only. So if a non-resident wants to go to the beach and they somehow make it to East or West Wharf, the staff there will direct them to head to Surf Club to purchase the pass, and then they can go to any of the 3 beaches throughout the day. Again, the new fees this year, Monday through Thursday, $50 per vehicle, and Friday through Sunday, holidays and special events, $75 per vehicle. And we limit those sales to 75 per day. And as I talked about back in September when I gave my end of season review, we only sold 75, the max number, just a couple of times last year. And there really is no rhyme or reason to it. It's not like 4th of July. It's a random Saturday or Sunday. So really can't plan when that's going to be. But we do have signs that we will post. We have all new signs made up this year. So when we do sell out of those 75, we will post on the road to alert the folks coming down that there are no more parking passes available. Thanks, Jeannie. So the parking pass policy, as I said earlier, beginning Saturday, May 23rd through Monday, September 7th of Labor Day. And as we require beach parking passes at West Wharf, this slide's wrong, I'm sorry. So West Wharf will require parking passes through the month of September, as we've done the last few years, to the thankfulness of residents, that allows them easier access to parking down at West Wharf. Resident and non-resident season parking passes alike have to be affixed to the outside driver's windshield. So we took the public input from the past where, say, you had tinted windows in your car from the inside and did not want to put your beach parking pass sticker on the tint. We heard you. These parking passes are now going on the outside windshield. And if they get peeled off, it says void all across it. So if this scenario comes up where someone has peeled your sticker off thinking they're going to use it, they're sadly mistaken, because it's going to say void and they will be stopped and dealt with at the gate.
Austin, what's going to happen to a person who scotch tapes this beach pass to the inside of their window?
So thanks, Bruce. So that's something we deal with every year. And that is a way that folks try to get away with passing the parking sticker on to multiple vehicles, giving it to a family member that doesn't live in town. Said this at the last meeting. Please affix your sticker to your vehicle. We are going to not allow you in unless you do it. We will do it for you. But please stick the pass onto the outside windshield. It helps our staff see it as you drive through and prevents traffic jam ups. And it just makes for an easier time for everybody involved. So please stick your parking pass on the outside of your windshield. If you get to the gate and hold it up, you're not going to be allowed in unless you get out, do it, or hand it to us and we'll do it for you. If you do not have a pass, as I just said, you won't be allowed to enter the beach facilities. If you are a resident or want to purchase a pass as a non-resident, you'll be allowed to do so at the Surf Club office, or residents can purchase them online throughout the season. If you do purchase your parking pass online as a resident, it does take some time through the mail to get to you. So I do wholeheartedly recommend that you just buy it the day you come. And we'll let you in, you park, you come to the office, we sell you the pass, you stick it on, and you can go about your lovely day here at the beaches. If you do want to purchase it online, just give it a week or so, because by the time we get it, your order the next day, we process it, put it in the mail. It takes time. So we process them as quickly as possible. It's always the next day. But if you purchase it on a Sunday, it's not going to go out till Monday. Or if you purchase it on a Saturday, it's not going to go out till Monday. So I really do recommend you come in person. Just come the first day you want to come to the beach, buy the pass in person, and you'll be all set. For the Independence Day weekend, parking passes, as we've done for the last 5 years, will not be sold in person from Thursday, July 2nd through Sunday, July 5th. So if you're a resident, please purchase your parking passes ahead of the holiday week. If you arrive at the gates during this time without a parking pass, you will not have access to the beaches. So there's a lot of time between now and Thursday, July 2nd. So please plan ahead. Do it through the mail. If you only come for the 4th of July festivities in the week, go ahead, place your order online. You'll get it in plenty of time. But by Wednesday, July 1st, you should have your parking pass if you plan to come to any of our beaches from Thursday, the 2nd of July, all the way through Sunday, July 5th. So please plan ahead. These are the important dates for the summer. And repeating myself, but Memorial Day weekend is Saturday the 23rd through Monday the 25th. The Madison Bicentennial Rising Strawberry Moon Festival, Saturday, June 27th, with a rain date of Sunday, June 28th. So one more point. After some back and forth, if you are a resident and you're never going to come to the beach except for the Madison Bicentennial Strawberry Moon Festival, if you can show us a tax liability at the gate, so car registration, property tax bill, car tax bill, we will allow you access that day only. So that will not be in effect any other day except for Saturday, June 27th, or the rain date. And I think it's important to note, just because you have a beach parking pass does not mean that you're going to have access to parking, because days like the fireworks night, the June 27th event are likely to fill up. The parking lots will fill up. So if you're planning on coming to the fireworks or the Strawberry Moon Festival, suggest getting here early or taking advantage of the shuttle service, which is free. And there'll be more details about that coming out as we get closer to the festival and the 4th of July fireworks. Fireworks are Thursday, the July 2nd at approximately 9:30. The concert on the green is Friday, July 3rd at 6, and the Independence Day Parade by the Exchange Club is Saturday, July 4th, kicking off at 10 a.m. Labor Day weekend, Saturday, September 4th through Monday, September 7th. Talked about that already. Next slide we talked about already too. But I think to note on this last slide, if you're dropping visitors off for the entire Independence Day weekend, so Thursday through Sunday, you'll be able to drop them off. If you don't have a parking pass, you'll be able to drop them off at the checkpoint, which we instituted a handful of years ago at the intersection of West Wharf Road and Surf Club Road. It works really well. It eliminates traffic jam ups down Surf Club Road. So if you have a pass and there's parking available, we wave you on in. If you don't have a pass and are looking to drop somebody off, you could do so at the checkpoint and then proceed on your way. And then when you're picking visitors up after the fireworks, you will not have access to West Wharf or Surf Club Road. Those are exit roads only. So recommend telling your guests or your children or anyone that you're dropping off to, use the shuttle service and then pick them up at Stop and Shop, Route 79 commuter lot, or the train station during fireworks night. And then those shuttles run continuously around 7 o'clock to and from the top of Surf Club Road.
And Austin, this all will all be posted on the website, correct?
Correct.
You're
And
gonna
99% of it is and has been posted on the website since, beginning of March.
Yeah.
But the presentation, you could have access to that on the website after the meeting. And then you could call with any questions. We'd be happy to talk you through it. or ask the questions when you come purchase your pass. All staff is, highly trained in everything I just went over and knows it like the back of their hand. So, stop
Yeah, and
on.
I think that the highlight really is that there's really not any operational changes about how we're handling July 4th. It's going to be like we've done the last 5 years. There's been no changes to the pricing except for non-residents. So that cost has gone up, but the resident costs are the same. And we just have an extra event this season, the Strawberry Moon Festival, which is our town celebration. So that's a Saturday, the last Saturday in June. It'll be a little unique, something special going on there. But pretty much the summer will be operating as it always has, right?
And just plan ahead. That's all.
Yeah.
If you plan ahead and get your pass, you'll have a smooth entrance to any of the beaches during any of these special events or any random day in the summer. If you don't plan ahead, and don't have your beach pass, then it makes for a difficult interaction at the gate. And we don't want that for staff or the residents. We want everybody to get in, enjoy their time here, and by following the policies that have been set forth, and not arguing with the gate guards. They're kids. They're just doing their job. And I'm a kid at heart, but I work the gate guard huts too during the busiest of days. And, we all follow the same procedures from a 16-year-old high school kid right up through my older staff. So plan ahead, buy your pass, and we'll have no negative interactions at the gates all summer.
Okay. Any further questions for Austin? Very thorough conversation. And everything's available on the website for you to kind of check in and make your plans for the summer. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we're good. Thank you for your time, and
Thanks, everybody.
sure we'll see you back here at the next one when we talk more about the surf club plan, right? So
Will do.
great.
Thanks.
All right, well, moving on to item number 9, discuss and take action to approve the following special appropriations as per the 2026-2027 capital improvement program. A, $1 million into the Major Roads Fund pending Board of Finance and Town Meeting approval. And B, $125,000 into the Coastal Resiliency Reserve Fund pending Board of Finance approval.
Moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, great. So these were 2 appropriations that we talked about during the budgeting process. They were part of the Board of Selectmen presentation to the public when we presented our recommended budget. And what these are infusions to build up balances. For the $1 million is part of a long-term funding plan for the major roads accounts. I think everybody in the board acknowledged that people wanted to see a more robust pavement program. We did a big study on our pavement, the quality of our pavement 2 years ago, and that was presented in several public meetings. We actually are on par with a lot of our comparable communities. We have a pretty good road rating, but the thought was if we could get some more money into the paving account, we could maybe try to eke out more paving every year. Downside is we're kind of having some headwinds hit us now with oil prices and things like that. So although this is going to be really helpful to have into the account, I don't know if it's going to help us too much because we might be spending a lot more money just paving what we have as our normal road paving plan. So we'll see how that shakes out. But I think this is going to be a good way to just keep the balance up high in there, and try to get more roads done when we do go out. And we typically do a spring and a fall paving plan. So that's what the $1 million is for. And then the $125,000, we've been doing this, I think, 3 years in a row now when we set up the Coastal Resiliency Fund, which is a special fund dedicated to projects to address coastal resiliency. We've been expending money out of that for some planning, and we have a project actually right now in that fund for the Middle Beach Road drainage project coming out of that. So this is just a funding mechanism that we've been putting 125 into the special account. So I don't know, I know we've talked about, especially the $1 million on and off. This is part of a plan to do $1 million this year and then $1 million next year if you know it allows next year also. Um, any questions or further conversation from the board on this? And the $1 million, because it goes over the 250,000 threshold, would be going to town meeting if the Board of Finance approves it.
Nope.
No? Okay. And I just want to, you know, for the public's benefit, one thing I always hear is roads, right? The conditions of the road. So this will help. But I do also want to highlight there's a process that you go through. This road rating study, you know, lists a condition for every road in the town, and there's buckets of categories. So there is a method behind how roads get paved. Sometimes we are adapting a little bit because, say, you know, if the water company's doing water main work, which we found happened on some roads down in part of the town, but generally we try to stick to a more like a methodological approach. I don't know if that's a real word. Anyways, you know, in terms of how we rank what roads we put on the paving schedule every year. So with that, then I guess all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, so that passes unanimously. Item number, and then we'll call the public meeting. I just need to look at the calendar because the town meeting, excuse me, will require staffing for registrars. And as we start entering June, it gets more complicated with people being available. So I'll come back at the next meeting with a proposed date for the town meeting for that. Assuming this gets passed by the Board of Finance at their meeting next week. Item number 10 is discuss and take action to approve the following special appropriations pending Board of Finance approval. A, $220,000 into the storm events account due to deficit resulting from winter storms, and B, $75,000 into the Meals on Wheels Reserve Fund.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, the first one, I don't know if you have questions about this. We've been saying this was coming. We had a lot of storm events this winter, and in particular, they all fell on weekends, which was good for the schools, right? But not great for us because it caused a lot of overtime. And so, you know, and so between equipment costs, overtime costs, public safety support, everything, you know, we had a big deficit in this account. What we try to do is look, whenever we set this account, we kind of look at an average over the last 5 years, and that's what we budget for. And this just definitely was a year that we hadn't seen probably in 10 years, this level of storm events hit us. And it's not just snowstorms, it's any kind of storm event that hits us. So, and then item number B, you know, this was a long conversation throughout the budgeting process. We are committing to continue the Meals on Wheels program. The debate has been, how do we fund that? We've started with, in partnership with the Madison Foundation, a fundraising program to get more outside dollars to fund this because we're working off of an endowment that had been donated to cover Meals on Wheels. That balance is running low, the Marcus Fund. And so now the idea was putting a little, infusing some money into to make sure that the balance was at a good level so that we can continue to offer the meals and not have to, you know, keep putting in small appropriations. Our board in April was recommending $100,000, which is what the Board of Finance had told us they would support in the budgeting process. And then for some reason, after we passed it, the Board of Finance decided they didn't want us to do $100,000. So even though I think we had actually wanted to do 150 to just have this set aside and know the money was there and not worry about it. So instead of, you know, so I think what we came up with was $75,000. That actually is kind of what we take from the Marcus Fund every year. And so we kind of said, well, let's at least know that we can save ourselves 1 year, not dipping into that money, and keep that separate. The other thing I'll mention is we are getting $206,000 from the state that was unbudgeted or unplanned for an infusion. That money will come in, I think September or October. So I think that, you know, earmarking, 75 from that for this and 125 for the coastal resiliency fund that we just approved kind of covers that. So it won't actually be coming out of fund balance. We can say, hey, we took some of that unexpected state money and we're going to use it to sustain the Meals on Wheels program. So that was how we came up with the 75,000. And this would have to go back to the Board of Finance for approval. So any questions on either of those? I know we've had conversations about both these in the past, so. No? Okay. All right. Great. Well, with that then, all in favor of approving item number 10, say aye.
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 All right, great. Okay, so both those pass. Item number 11, discuss edits to proposed Affordable Housing Trust Fund ordinance. We had a conversation about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and I know there was some different views on this. Aaron did send this around kind of today, so I know the board probably didn't have a lot of time to review it. So my thought was, if you want to, we could talk in more detail about the ordinance itself and then, but still call the public hearing, which we're planning for in June. I was trying to marry it up with another time where we had a board meeting. Or we could just table this and come back, or I don't know what your thoughts are. The changes she made were more focused on just adding Board of Finance and kind of, specifying a few things based on our conversation. And then our town council has not given us her final comments on this. So I don't think we're ready to approve the ordinance as is, but
Do it at our
normally,
next meeting.
pardon?
Can we just do it at our next meeting?
I think so. I think we can do both of these, and because it's still adequate time for the public hearing, because you need lead time to post it and stuff. So maybe we just do this at the May 26th meeting, but take a look at it. I know, Bruce, you had some specific things that had some concerns about this. If there's language that you're proposing to address your concerns, maybe you could send those around prior to our
Sure.
next meeting.
It's all of the things that I had a problem with are still there. The property tax fees, diverting fees that now go in and offset the mill rate into this fund, and the opportunity for the town to actually borrow money, to bond money to fund this. All that language is still in there. So,
So, well, do you want to actually go in and then maybe do a markup of what you would prefer, or different language, or what you were? Yeah, why don't
Sure,
we do
it's a simple
that? That way we
strike.
can. Yeah.
It's a simple
Okay.
strike of those funding sources. That's all. But I will redline the
Okay.
parts that.
I thought there was more than that, but if that's, yeah, okay, why don't you do that and we'll send that around with a revised draft and then we'll be ready to kind of have a quick conversation in the end of May. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, so then I we'll table item number 12, I guess. Can I get a motion to table item number 12?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Great, and then we'll do that at the next meeting. So, okay. All right, so item number 13 is citizens' comments. So I know we have members of the public on, we talked about a lot today. With that, please raise your hand, state your name and address, and try to limit your comments to around 2 minutes would be appreciated. Any? Okay,
Yes, there's
Jeannie?
some. Go ahead, Jim.
Hi, it's Jim Schmaltz, Jonathan's Landing.
It's hard to
Um,
listen to you, Jim, with that picture.
I'm feeding it as we speak. So a couple of questions. One is with the stairs at the surf club, the new staircases. Why they're out of the water? That I heard Peggy say it was storms, but when you look at the prints, they were kind of built to the same elevation as the old stairs that they were replacing, which is, it was like a 3 or 4 foot difference from the low high mark. So, all of that kind of doesn't make sense. I'm just trying to get a better clarification on on why that, why that's an issue. And then the other one, I guess no replies there. So the other question is, so we're doing the special appropriation now for that $1 million. And so, other than it making the budget look like it was $1 million more, which it really was, why was there a reason to not actually just put it in the budget? And again, I'll assume that I'm just not going to get an answer there. You already are subsidizing the budget potentially with the unassigned funds. So you could have just said, hey, it's $1 million for the roads. This is it. So essentially we're paying the same thing. Everything went the same way, but now, people are going to have to pay $1 million more than they just signed on for 2 weeks ago or whatever it was. So with that, I'm all set for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other hands raised?
No, there are not.
No? Okay, great. All right. With that, then, I want to thank
Jim
you
has raised
for-
his hand again. Go ahead, Jim.
Sorry, one other question. The Surf Club Master Planning Committee, where is there any information on that? I don't ever see a meeting. I don't see any notes from any of it. I know citizens are asked to be on it, and was just wondering why that's not done like the other committees at all.
Okay, well, there is no, just to clarify, there is no surf club committee right now. This is a process being run by the Beach and Recreation Committee and the Board of Selectmen for the planning process. And then there's opportunities for public input throughout the planning process. So we will
Well,
be
you had
holding
Dave
another,
from the-
we'll be holding another public information session in June. That will give the public the opportunity to comment on the plans.
In your facilities meeting, you
No, the
asked-
facilities
no,
committee is not part of the surf club planning, the
the
surf club
chair
committee. So,
discusses it,
um,
said he was asked to be on the committee in the meetings.
yeah, I don't know what you're referring to. I'm not gonna get into back and forth about it,
Okay,
but,
I'll
the facilities
post the
committee is a
video
separate,
again
the
and say
facilities
that
committee
you
is a
don't
separate
understand
committee,
what's going on.
okay?
Yeah,
But
but the chair said he was asked to be on.
I don't know what
And
you're
he comes
referring
back and
to, but
reports to-
I'm not here to get into a debate about that. So, but, anyway, with that, I guess.
No, we just lost your audio. You muted yourself,
Oh.
Peggy.
Yeah, any other hands raised? Nope.
No.
Okay, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
No, we're
Oh,
going.
wait, what am I saying? We got executive session now. Yeah, I forgot. All right, so with that, then, I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session and to invite, our HR director, Deb Ferrante, into executive session to join us.
So moved.
So move second.
Okay, all right, all in favor, say aye, and there will be not any further public comment after that. We'll just be adjourning when we're finished with the executive session. Okay, thank you. So we will hold on until we go into executive session. The cloud, okay. All right, recording has started. So with that, I would like to make a motion to discuss and take or to take action to approve a collective bargaining agreement with the civilian dispatchers effective July 1st, 2026.
Moved. Second.
Second.
Okay, any further comments or questions? Well, actually, usually it's to approve and authorize the first, I'm going to amend my motion and authorize the first selectman to sign all documents. With that, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, great. And with that, motion carries. Great. Excellent work, Deb. Nice to
Thank
get that
you.
one done.
Deb.
And can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Uh,
All in favor, say aye. Yay. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
Right.
Bye-bye.
You too.